The draft happened last weekend, and Shador Sanders, the son of primetime Deion Sanders, fell from all reports. My entire social media feed on Saturday was about how Shadour Sanders was the victim of racism, that the NFL and its owners had colluded against this young, strong black male because he was a young, strong black male, and they wanted to prove a point. What that point was, we don't know. Chris, take it away.
Yeah, so as you said, the NFL draft concluded last week. It ended on Saturday. And the biggest story, one that seems to sort of have superseded the whole draft, is this Shador Sanders story. Now, he's one guy of 250-plus that was going to get drafted. And, I mean, I know it's a big story because friends and family of mine who don't care about sports are calling about it. I've had a chance to go on a couple of different news networks that have nothing to do about sports and talk about it. And it's pretty incredible. So, yeah, he had the most unprecedented slide prospect has ever had that I can remember. He was a projected top 3 pick. Now, what that means is you get picked in the top 3. The draft now, let me break the draft down for you a little bit. It's a 3-day event now, right? The first round happens on a Thursday night. Second and third round happen on Friday, and then 4 through 7 happen on Saturday.
That hasn't always been the case.
No, they've changed this draft a bunch of times because the NFL needs to find a way to profit and monetize everything.
I remember in high school and college, we would get together and watch the draft, and it was like a one day. It started on a Saturday. We'd order a bunch of pizzas. We'd have cases of Keystone Light, and we just hang out and drink and watch the draft. Now it's turned into a 72-hour extravaganza.
It's a spectacle now, like anything else in the NFL. So the way I remember it, the earliest is rounds 1, 2, 3 happening on one day and 4, 5, 6, 7 happening on the second day. But now because the NFL has its own network, now they sell tickets. So they pick a host city every year. It used to always be at Radio City in New York. This year was Green Bay, Wisconsin. So in the middle of Green Bay, Wisconsin, they sold 130,000 tickets for people to come live. And over the 3-day period, 20 million people watched the event on TV. So, yeah, so it's a story that's getting a ton of play, and it's interesting, right? Because what everybody wants to say, and I'll give you one guess what everyone thinks it is. Say it with me. Racism. Awesome.
Isn't this the guy that, I don't know if it's real or not, allegedly, is this the guy that they were saying was playing Catan during all of his interviews with these
All right, so that I'm going to get there.
Playing what?
Catan.
So this is how it is.
It's an amazing game.
So here's the deal. So let me just like paint a picture for you. Over the first 2 rounds, there's 32 teams in the NFL. So over the first 2 rounds, there's 64 picks. 59 of these 64 picks are what we would classify as people of color. So in this racist draft, where the number 1 overall pick was, in fact, a black quarterback, it seems kind of far-fetched to me. As Kellyanne stated, now, as we've gotten further into it, people are starting to come out and talk about it. And Shador Sanders, so what I wanted to just sort of talk about what the slide is. First, I just want to back it up for a second. And can we play a clip real quick from Skip Bayless? He's sort of like a sports media, like lightning rod, and he's been in the sports media game for probably like 50 years now. And this is what Skip Bayless had to say. He's a former ESPN and FS1 personality. Go on, Skip.
So if it's not football, what is it? Are there racial undertones here? Racist undertones? You be the judge. Racism is so hard to sort of grasp and prove, but it just stinks. It smells of racist undertones.
Yeah, we can stop that there.
Too many white people.
That guy.
We can stop it there. And now we could just play Ryan Clark, who's next. And he's just a couple of seconds. And if you know what Ryan Clark's MO is, it's sort of the same deal. But here we go. Ryan Clark.
But we all know that they plant these certain reports or they say these certain things, and you do hear the word arrogant. Why is he arrogant?
We could fast
because
forward
he won't walk into the meeting and bend the knee, or he won't the same way a coach or an offense coordinator would, because that's what he's going to have to do. And I've had conversations with Shadour Sanders, and he can do that. We all know that it's not just about him being Deion Sanders' son. It's about the bravado he carries. It's about the fact that he looks a certain way. It is about the fact that the color of his skin sometimes at that position can be questioned.
All right, we can stop that. He was supposed to be number 3 overall.
Oh, wow.
I fully agree. I can't wait for the...
Say it one more time.
How many quarterbacks did I take him before him?
About 6.
Oh, wow.
Now, the weird thing is that's cost him $44 million in contract.
I fully agree with all this. I can't wait to see the time when black people will finally be on the up and up in the NFL, and they finally get them.
So
of course I am. So the NFL is minority white at this point.
that makes no sense.
I think almost every sport at this point is a minority.
Except hockey.
So what Ryan?
That's true.
So what Ryan Clark is saying at the end of that clip is obviously, and there has been a historical, I don't want to say prejudice, but there was a time where it was widely thought that a black quarterback couldn't really lead your team far. They almost made it more like they can't comprehend the playbook and stuff like that. But at this point, currently, 20 of 32 NFL teams now have black quarterbacks starting as of week 1.
2/3 have a black quarterback.
Yes.
Yeah, and in some form or fashion, like a Mahomes who's part black, a Russell Wilson who's part black, Tua Tagovailoa who's of Samoan descent, somebody who's a person of color, not a white quarterback.
Wait. I was reliably informed by Colin Kaepernick that the NFL draft is the equivalent of a slave auction.
Yes.
So why are all these black men clambering over each other to be earlier in the slave auction than
this is the same Colin Kaepernick who 8 years after his last snap makes sure once a year to have him and his girlfriend tell us that he's ready when a team is ready to bring him in.
Of course.
But yeah, Colin Kaepernick's he's laughable. But yeah, so at this point, what's the real reason is what everybody's asking. And there's a bunch of them. So we talked about Prime, that's Deion Sanders. Probably he's widely thought of as the greatest cornerback in NFL history. He's now the current head coach at the University of Colorado, and this is what Deion said heading up to the draft. This could be why some teams may have been a little hesitant to go all in on Shador.
A couple teams that I won't allow him to play for. Whoa. This is my profession. I know what's behind the curtain. We ain't got to get back there for me to understand what's not prominent for my son. I'm not doing it.
And if he doesn't listen to you?
Who? No, you must mean owners, not my son.
Have you told him privately who you would like for him to play for?
It's not like who I would like for him to play for. It's
so what he's getting at there is, and let me just slow it down. You have to understand that these NFL organizations are $10 billion businesses, and when you give the keys to the castle to your quarterback, you're investing everything in him. Shador Sanders picked where he was supposed to be is about a $50 million investment and 5 years of this organization's full, focus. So if you come in as a guy who comes in with noise, what NFL teams don't want is that. They want harmony. It's hard enough to win games in that league without these distractions. So that's what I tend to think the Deion Sanders thing. And then another thought that people are having is his name has come across for a couple of NFL head coaching jobs lately. So NFL head coaches and GMs are saying now, if I bring Shadour Sanders in early, we invest a lot of money in him, and things start to go bad, my job's at risk. They're just going to bring his father in, who's his coach prior. So why would teams line up to hire their potential replacement? So that's become a big thing amongst teams. And
what would you say his frequency is for running versus throwing? Because I always say the guys who default to running first are always end up flailing out.
Well, see, that's the thing. So Shadour Sanders, despite his dad being one of the most fantastic athletes in American sports history, if you know the story of Deion Sanders, one of the fastest 40 times in combine history, like they say 4.21. It's like a thing of legend. Jeez. Then he played Major League Baseball. So he's the only athlete ever to score a touchdown and hit a home run in the same day. He played a game in the afternoon with the Falcons. He flew to a Major League Baseball game and hit a home run in the evening. So he's a phenomenal athlete. The thing about Shadour Sanders is he does not possess these same athletic qualities. He's he's less of a runner, more of a thrower. But if you really dig into his numbers, his completion percentage is high, but he's got 150 screen passes. So things like that sort of work against him. So it's very easy for somebody who's not really well versed in this to see the numbers and say look at his completion percentage. Look how many passes he's completed. And it's yeah, but these are 2-yard dink and dunkers, which a lot of people don't really, aren't really familiar with.
Is this just another, because it seems like this comes right off the bat. It's very interesting what's going on right now in American media when it comes to race issues. You come off the unfortunate and horrific death that Austin Metcalf suffered at the hands, allegedly, of Carmelo Anthony. Yeah. Then you look at this where they start pinning whites against blacks with that instance right away. Well, Austin Metcalf shouldn't have gone up to him and told him to leave. There are reports that there was a tussle beforehand. Then you look at this. Everybody's pointing out that it's race. It's not a matter of whether or not the kid's good or not. Then you look at the video that came out yesterday of the woman in, I believe it's in Minnesota. Is that where it is? Shiloh something? I don't know her name.
Shiloh Hendricks.
According to the reports, this woman is at a playground with her child. An African-American child comes up to it, or black, I guess. We're African-American. They're not from Africa. They live here in America.
Well,
right? So
the guy who took the video was from Somalia.
Okay,
so it's actually an African.
Okay, so a black child comes up to her child, steals something from her child, and then she proceeds to call the child the N-word. That doesn't get captured on film. What gets captured on film by the Somalian that you're mentioning,
who is allegedly a sex offender who had no business being near a playground filming kids, but nobody's asking that question. Of course,
yeah, I saw those reports as well online. That's how it's being framed. But then it became this woman she's in the right, because then the guy starts filming and asks her, did you call that child the N-word? And she says right on camera, full hard ER from the N to the R. She says the word, if he's going to act like that, then I'm going to call him that. Oh, wow. And then that woman apparently went into hiding, and they created a Give, Send, Go for me. The last I looked, it was over 150,000. But then the argument online becomes, was she right to use the N-word? And now people are fighting about that. It feels like these things keep getting put in our faces where they're trying to start some type of race disagreement, and that could escalate into a war between white people and black people.
Look at the money behind it, too. Like, the Tides Foundation's pumping money into the foundation of that guy that's saying all the stupid shit about Austin Metcalf's dad. The guy that's like the random press conference guy for the Anthony family.
The attorney that's representing Carmelo Anthony's family.
So he's like a former criminal that like beat up a kid, beat up a girl before. Like, that's a documented thing. And he started this weird foundation that like represents black causes, gets money from the Tides Foundation, which is like the shell company for the Open Society. So that's Soros' foundation.
It just feels like they keep putting these racial issues in front of everybody, like it's like throwing wood into the fire and hoping that it goes off.
And Alex Jones has been talking about this for a long time, that like they're trying to like create a situation where the police forces or military is like used like in a violent way against black people, and they're going to like frame it as Trump did this or that. So I don't know if they're trying to like incite it to like create a response from the police, like if things get like out of control. But have you heard Jones saying that?
No, but I do remember the George Floyd protests and then the burning down of CVS's because for some reason that helps establish that Black Lives Matter. I remember this came out during the 2024 presidential campaign. Gwen Waltz, the wife of Tim Waltz, said that she'd like to leave her windows open. She could smell the burning stores around her as a sign of symbolic justice.
You didn't see that?
Oh, yeah.
She said that?
Yeah, she's insane. Her husband's a wacko, and their children are both retarded as well. Go listen to, did you see what the daughter said about people running yesterday? That running is a privilege that only certain people get. Motherfucker, take shoes. That's what it takes. The privilege to run is shoes. I've got
Not even look at Africa.
Yeah. What did you think nobody ran
until all the time without shoes?
Until
that is true.
You know, Douglas P. Shue invented the shoe in 1804, and nobody was allowed to run before that.
But not everything is. If you make everything a racial issue, if everything is racist, then nothing becomes racist.
Yeah.
Then you lose all credibility every time you go, that guy's racist. Well, you said everything's racist. And like, there's a guy around here that complains about everything. He complains about everything. From thumbnails to the distribution to the episodes themselves. He bitches about everything. So when he bitches, I don't listen because he bitches about everything. But if somebody were to speak up, let me think of who around here doesn't really complain a lot. Tony or Booker. He never complains. If Tony is to complain about something, I listen. You know why? Because Tony never complains. So when you continue to yell about racism, you lose my attention. I don't care. You always yell that stuff. But when somebody speaks out that never speaks out, that's when I'm like, all right, I'm listening. Go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say.
It's a good analogy.
Getting back to this story.
Yeah.
Is it true that he was playing Catan during these interviews? I want to know.
All right, so this is the next part. So when we really dig into what Shador Sanders, how he handled this whole thing, you got to understand, this is a job interview for these guys. You prepare your entire life for this. So there's obviously your game film is going to always be your most important, but then we have something called the NFL Combine. And it's almost like a 3-day 360-degree full-on job interview. It could be interviews with teams all hours of the day and night, and they try to make you as uncomfortable as possible. And then there's a physical component to it, right? So it's the most important thing other than our game film that we can, do to sort of leave a great impression with these teams coming in. So at the Combine, Shador Sanders was tasked with, by teams that were, rumored to be interested in him, they said, Shador, do us a favor. We're going to give you our playbook. We want you to study it, and we want you to come in with some form of grasp on it, because they're going to take us up on the board and make sure that conceptually we can break these things down and we can think on the fly and sort of like figure out things quickly.
That all sounds normal.
And there was an article that came out, if we can show the article, and it's this here, is that teams brought him in with the hope that he would take the time and do the homework and study the playbook, and he came in completely underprepared.
A top NFL draft team requested Shadour Sanders study his playbook for an interview season, and he arrived unprepared.
And by unprepared, there's formations and personnel groups and plays that you need to know. That's the one thing I learned in the NFL the short time I was there. The most incredible thing is how this playbook is this thick. And every day things go out and every day new things come in. On top of that, other teams were talking about how he almost sandbagged teams that he didn't want to go to. Ooh. So he would come to the interviews, and when they would ask him questions, he would talk about, no, you guys got to be prepared for me and my arrival and when I come. It's like there are few and far between talents that are good enough to be able to carry themselves like that, and a team still invest that fully in you. And Shador Sanders, despite being a good player, he definitely should have been drafted earlier than he was, in my opinion. But he wasn't that good.
So he must have underperformed in the interviews, like you said.
So he underperforms in the interviews. And then what a lot of the top guys do is they choose not to perform physically at the Combine, but it's another opportunity missed when he chose, I'm not going to throw at the Combine, I'm going to throw at my pro day later, which isn't quite as strange, but it's another opportunity he had to impress the teams, and he chose not to.
I'm surprised that based off the interviews that his dad did, then he didn't act better in these interviews, and he didn't go all out, and he didn't act with some sort
that's
of
why
like
the
humbleness.
The racism angle is so stupid, because when they throw that out there, now everybody's sitting around, whether it's on ESPN or even here, we're talking about racial issues. Well, what you should really be having a conversation about is the consequences of pride,
Isn't
the
this
importance
a team
of humility.
Sport?
And
it's a team sport.
Who comes into a job interview? Because that's what this is. This is a glorified job interview for someone who's going to get paid millions of dollars to play a game on TV. That's what football is. It is a game. You were sitting down at a job interview and saying, yeah, I don't really care what I can bring to this organization. What can you do to support me?
Well, the interesting thing is, to piggyback on Kelly's question, is I spoke earlier about how there's a very, very, very small cast who can go in there and just act a certain way and be so physically gifted or just football savvy.
And those are the whites that can act that way, right?
Unfortunately, though, his father was one of those few, so that's where he's getting this example from. There's this famous story about Deion going to the Combine, and the story is something along the lines of he's walking past the room with all of the scouts in it, and they say, Deion, come sit down with us. And before he sits down, he goes, let me ask you a quick question. Before I sit down, what number are you guys picking? And let's say they said hypothetically 5th. He goes, I'm cool. I'm not going to be there then. And he walks away. So it's like that is the example that he's been fed.
One of the things, so Deion, in that clip that you were playing, it mentioned Deion telling his son what teams he didn't want him to go to.
Right.
And on the caption above, it said the Browns. So did Deion not want him to go to the Browns?
Well, this is hysterical, is that after this happened, the Browns are notorious for not being a great organization. They've been one of the probably worst run American sports organizations in the last 30 years. And there's a funny tweet from Deion about 2021 that said, man, if I'm an NFL quarterback, there's one place I am not going, and that's the Cleveland Browns. And it went crazy viral the next day.
And his son ended up getting drafted by the Browns, correct?
And his son, 5th round.
So, by the way, terrible sports team, but the fans, have you ever been to the Dog Pound? It's crazy. These are people, I lived in Cleveland for 4 years. We would go to NFL games in November. There'd be 7 feet of snow, and they'd be out in the Muni lot outside of First Energy Stadium, was what it was called at the time, wearing shorts and drinking beers at 7 o'clock in the morning tailgate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cleveland Brown fans are one of the most diehard fans in the country, and it's a shame that they continue to get shit on year after year after year in the NFL.
They need rebranding, though. Why the hell are they called the Dog Pound? Their mascot name had nothing to do with the Browns. They're called the Browns because Paul Brown's their owner.
Well, he was. Then Art Modell moved him to
in the middle of the
Baltimore.
night.
Literally in the middle of the night. I remember growing up, my neighbor was a Cleveland Browns fan. My neighbor's uncle lived at the house. He was a Cleveland Brown fan, and all of a sudden he started wearing purple. And I was like, what's going on with that? And he goes, they moved my team to Baltimore. I'm old. You weren't even alive when that happened.
And to just put a bow on the whole topic, there is one sliver of, good that happened. Shador Sanders, where it would have been very easy to sort of hide from the cameras like a lot of guys do and be mad and pissed off on camera. When he did eventually get drafted in the 5th round, he was very gracious.
Good.
Seemed like he might have been humbled a bit by it and was just so thankful and excitable to be drafted, which sort of didn't seem like the way he was going to take it. So hopefully, the weight and the stories and the thing humbled him a little bit. So, we're going to see how it goes going forward.
Let this be his redemption
I hope so.
story.
Well, what's the cool thing about it is that I found myself not a huge fan in the beginning, but based every day afterwards, they'd interview him about it.
Yeah.
And it's got to be embarrassing because you're on camera expecting to be drafted early. Every day, it's in God's hands. I'm okay with it. Wherever I end up, I'm just blessed to be able to play. So I'm sure he probably flipped the way a lot of people feel about him throughout the process. So now it's like build on it, young man, and let's go. He's going into a good situation for him, too, where he has the potential to go in there and play where other places he might not have.
So if you like this clip, click right here. And if you want to see more like it, click right here. Stay angry, Patriots.